Okay, we'll call meeting to order. It's noon. We'll note the attendance, board and committee members. Approval of the agenda. Do I have a motion to approve?
And to approve the agenda.
Great, we got a motion and a motion. Approval, oh no, public participation. Do we have anybody who wants to address the committee? Okay. Approval of the minutes from April 16, 2025. I've read through these and they look fine to me. Does anybody have any questions or comments on the minutes? Okay, you want to give me a motion to approve, Brent? You second that, Shelley? So noted. Okay, Joe, it's all yours.
So I have to apologize. There is a mistake in the financials. So what I was reviewing them, this was our first month going through NetSuite, and I found an issue when I was going through my final analysis. That in order to expedite the process, I had already approved accounting to close NetSuite, so it wasn't going back to change that. So I left it in here when I presented it to you guys. So I'll get to that. Yeah. It's not material. It's to the positive, the bottom line too. So we did go through our first close. It was kind of a bumpy ride. We had some staffing transitions during that time. So we had a couple of staff due to some issues with other staff. Those have alleviated. Those have gone away. We've actually got a full staff now in accounting. So we have the controller in place. We have all our accountants, all our people. It's everything. So we're full staff again. First time since I've been back.
That's great, Joe. Why don't you just start at the top of the CFO, the new hire, and then just share with everybody what's going on with the controller job.
Yeah, so Angela Davis has accepted the CFO position. She will officially be an employee on Monday. So you guys will see her before meeting next week. So that's her CFO. Lots of great experience. I think she's gonna be good for the team. She brings nice, even kind of temperament to the position. Her one up would be the controller position, which is Blessy Robert. She's coming back to us. She was our controller for 3 years. She left due to some personal reasons. But she has retained the connection with Bartlett. She's done some contract work with her. And she's helped us through a lot of sticky points in the last year, I'd say. And so her coming back has been great. Staff's excited. Her re-engaging has kind of helped us stabilize staff as well. So the next level down, we have our accountants, which we've hired. We have Atania, we have Davey, we have Chris, who will be retiring, and we have 4 accountants right now. We're trying to look at and figure out whether 3 is the right number. We do have aggressive work we're trying to go through during the transition. It's just trying to work consistent. It's been a lot. And then we have John Ray, who does our accounts payable. So we have basically a fully staffed model. We are trying to review accounts payable as well. Before, it's always typically somewhere between 1.5 to 2 FTEs, but NetSuite has trimmed up some of the processes. We're in one system now, approvals streamlined. We're able to scan invoices in. There's AI that actually helps them do a lot of the data entry too. And so that's speeding things up. And so that's kind of where we're at today with accounting.
So Blessy is moving back or has moved back?
She is moving back. She will be in June on the 10th.
Great. End of July.
5th of July.
That's a long way to go and then come back, you know? She hasn't even been gone a couple of years, right?
21?
Was it that long ago? And Angela's also looking for a home. She had a purchase off.
Yeah, she had an offer in, and my understanding in chatting with her, she has another offer pending.
Oh, she does. Great. Okay, good. Fantastic. Well, that's good news, Joe. It's been kind of a long road.
I'm super excited. It's gonna be great to have it.
Right. We had one more hat, right? One less hat. Yeah.
And aside from that, as I was trying to go through and create these financials, I mean, it's not like riding a bike. I haven't felt super slow. Numbers I'm going through, but I was in 2 systems, so trying to create the historical for it and do the new one was just, I was definitely slower.
Yeah.
So that's my excuse for the mistake.
Okay.
So we look at the month, we did have a net gain for the month as roughly 412,000. And this was driven by increases in the revenue side. So we were very busy in the outpatient units. In OR, we've been busy. We've been busy in all the imaging modalities. So we had probably our best month ever with the MRI machine. We had over 200 studies.
Wow.
So you'll see that as we get to some of the statistics. CT was busy, BAMA was busy. Some of that's just driven as we do more procedures and bring in more doctors. You have some of those fall through. OR year to date through April, we've seen a 24% increase in revenue just in the OR as a unit. So some of the additional surgeons we brought in has increased that revenue.
And then, when the average facility fee for OR use is what?
I know the average for a knee and a hip. I don't have an average for just a general procedure, so I can't answer that question.
It's around 50 though, isn't it? Is it?
That'd be a hip or a knee. That'd be one of the majors, yeah. But there's smaller ones. We do carpal tunnels. We do a lot of smaller stuff that's not near with that.
Yeah, okay.
A lot of these are driven by the time in the OR. So some of the procedures that are done, not all doctors do step at the same speed. So a procedure that takes 3.5 hours can be much more expensive than what that takes an hour. On the inpatient side, we did see a reduction in revenues in both the mental health unit and med surge. Med surge was just slower census during the month of April. It has picked up in May and June. We've been full several times this month specifically. June's been very busy. A decrease in census during the month for MHU was driven by, we capped the census due to staffing. We've struggled to keep mental health nurses up there. Some of it has to do with people moving out of town. It's also been a struggle trying to get some contractors in there. We are fully staffed as of today. Once they get everyone onboarded,
Will be fully staffed, through the chair will be fully staffed the first week of July.
first week's July. I know we're starting to increase census. We've had a couple of tough populations that have kind of been rough on staff. And so that's driven some of the issues. We see some, I think we're getting beyond some of that. We have some patients leave that have been a problem or just tougher to care for. And then as staff come on, we'll be able to increase the census and the total acuity we're able to take care of.
A quick question. Are those patients transferred or discharged?
One was discharged to home today. The second one is going through, hopefully discharged next week to another facility.
Thanks.
That person's coming up on 120 days with us. They've been here a long time. As we go down to the expense line, you can see that most of our problem areas continue to persist. Contract labor continues to run high. Salaries and wages was high this month, but as we add providers, they're more expensive FTE, and as their salary, that drives that. The other item I'd have to point out where my error is, when you look at the insurance line item, we had some automated accruals that we built into NetSuite, but we also had some manual journal entries that were just manual processes. And so we double expensed insurance. This is our malpractice in our gym.
Takes through on questions.
Yeah. So that one is, we overspent that by roughly $80,000 for the month. So we could have a better bottom line. So you'll see that be an item in May when I post it back. So it looks super low.
So instead of 412 in the ballpark of 500,000.
Around 500,000. There's some other line items on here like non-medical professional fees was super low. There was an over accrual in the prior month where we had things double accrued. So as the prior CFO was going through financials, we had additional accruals that shouldn't have taken place. So April expenses in March were overstated, and we've corrected those during the work table. So with all that, like I said, we had a positive operating margin of just over 0.7%. Year to date, our operating margin is 3.8% with a goal, we're shooting for 3% operating margin to maintain cash flows and try to keep the hospital functional. And we're at 5.2% for the net margin year to date. So everything's trending in a good direction. And then as we look at the last 2 months of the year, May was super strong revenue wise. So I expect that to be a positive bottom line, even as we start cleaning up expenses. And then June, year month to date has been super strong as well. So everything's trending good. I mean, end of the year on a positive note.
Well, not to beat a dead horse, but we were at $8.3 million loss this time last year, and we're at $6.7 million positive bottom line this year. Better than $15 million turnaround.
Biggest swing. As you remember though, May was our first month making money last year, so this.
Yeah,
That was from now right up to this. So this is probably is.
Yeah.
Biggest difference you'll see is this month. On the balance sheet side, we see our AR days increased. We had a slowdown in collections. Some of that had to do with some staffing issues. We got some contracts in place, got our Medicare biller. It was less than a full day increase. I think that'll start coming back down. Self-pay continues to be a struggle. So we're trying to make, try different avenues to get the self-pay accounts collected. We also saw an increase in cash. So our days popped up to 15 days cash on hand. It was roughly a $2 million increase. With the transition, as we were training people new into the system and accounts payable, payments got to slow down. And then as we were getting AP into the system, like some of the stuff wasn't getting into the accruals or getting booked in a timely manner. Those processes have been smoothed out. We're caught up on most of the stuff this month. Got all those processes. So that's high level where we're at, and these questions, I do my report a little bit to check this. I'm not gonna go line item by line.
yeah, it's a little bit higher overview. Brent and Shelley, do you guys have questions?
I remember when these are doing this open the orthopedic clinic.
We opened it in January, but we didn't start doing surgeries until March.
Just curious if we know, to the outpatient revenue is attributable to.
Oh, we probably look back, radiology, radiology, we saw an immediate uptick in x-rays and MRIs because he started ordering right away. I could have to go look back and look at providers.
I'm just curious.
Some of our drill down technology is not super refined yet. We are working through our Power BI process. Right now, we can get great department level one-on-ones with compare departments, but getting to the physician level is not quite what it needs to be. But I'll try to answer your question before next one.
Mr. Chair, as a follow-up. So, the orthopedic clinic is not a separate department within it, within NetSuite, or is it by physician?
So it's a department, but all you see in there is the revenues. And so what he's asking about is really the facility revenues, which would be buried in anesthesia, same day, OR, multiple different departments. So you have to pull it back at a physician level revenue impact, which is a different thing.
I don't have a financial question so much as it is, I have a question about the audit timing, the new audit firm. Is that all in place at this point?
Yeah, they've been started engaging with that, starting to plan some of the first steps. They've requested some documentation so they can start printing themselves. They've engaged with LG Rayfield to get some path documentation as well.
Okay.
So they're getting ramped up.
And what's the schedule for both prelim and final? Do you know?
I don't know prelim. I think they plan on being here early September. If I remember the schedule right, and then hopefully having it done by the end of September was their goal. It's going to be driven by some of the interfund stuff that we have to work through with CBJ.
Okay. I think it'd be good to have either the partner or if there's a manager on site or somebody, just schedule, they can be on Zoom, but just a meet and greet,
And as just from past experience, when they start coming in the site, there will be one-on-ones. So audit committee specifically, there'll be interviews.
Yeah.
So that will ask you some questions.
I'm just thinking kind of the larger,
When they're on site, we can see if we can coordinate it more about the meetings to bring them on.
Okay. Great. So let's see, I didn't have any, are there any other questions on the financials? Joe and I have had a chance to go through these. On the hospice and home care on page 14, since we're going to have a little bit bigger discussion about this in a minute. So when you look at the the hospice numbers for year-to-date through April, we've got a $279,000 loss in there. And some of that loss includes contractual adjustments that really related to 2024, correct?
Yeah, there's
Could
probably.
you walk us through that?
So what, let's make sure I answer the question.
Dollar amount, you know, how much that was. So when we go to your hospice projections, and we get down to it here in a little bit, there's a difference between the bottom line projection and what we've got year-to-date actual.
So, off the top of my head, when I was looking at this, home health will have the bigger, the two adjustments, because they had actually got certified a little earlier, so the cleanup is going a little faster. They were pushing up about 170,000 in right off the prior year.
Okay.
And hospice is just over 100,000.
100,000.
Yeah, but we still have some old AR to clean up, so I don't want to give you a final number because it's going to change in the next 2 months.
I'm with you, but of this 279,000, roughly on the hospice side,
110 is related to last year's.
it's related, it's 2024 contractual adjustments that are included in the contractual line. That $276,000, it's the contractual on page 14.
Yes.
Okay.
So another thing is Angela gets on board is we look at our contractual model is built to be hospital focused. And so as we've added some of these other services, we haven't, and this is partially my fault, amended the model to kind of reflect these other pieces, right? So we need a more all-inclusive model that's going to look at each one of those. We're doing accruals, separate lines, because they get collected differently. The problem was, I mean, it's immaterial when you look at the hospital, it's a total of 376 because they're just rounding errors basically at this point. We can do a better job.
Okay. I did skip over one. I did have a question about the inpatient days of Wildflower. Would you just refresh our memory of what that dip in February was, Joe, for patient days of Wildflower Court? I'm on page 17. Yeah, it's this one up here.
Does it have to be?
Remember, Ken?
That's the number of days in the month. So if you take that over as an average daily census, I think it matches
Is
up.
it just that simple?
If you add 150 days, 180 days, somewhere between 150, 180 to that number,
Gotcha, okay.
because our census runs about 55. So you add 3 days to make it equal proportion, it's 165 patients.
And what's the census today? Do you know,
I
Ken?
think it's 56.
56 right now. So pretty close to what she can support from a staffing standpoint.
Yeah, she's kept it pretty much maxed out. 56, 57, pretty consistently.
All right. Okay, before we move on, any more questions for Joe? Shelley, want to make sure you're getting to chime in. Chris, you're online, I see. Any questions?
No, no questions. Thanks, Max.
Anything more on that, Joe? You ready to move on? Okay, let's go to page 18.
What we've included in here is 2 different projections. We've specifically focused on hospice this month. I know in some of the resolutions that the board did, we need to do home health, but we will be bringing that back on a separate month. So I'm just trying to, my thought process is if I can present one and then the other, there's clear delineation with how the programs do, although there is some cross coverage and some intermingle between the 2 departments. But we can bring these back in successive months. Hospice this month, home health next month, and then combine the month after that, so you guys have a good look at it. So what we have up here is a 25 projected, so this is where we assume we're at end year to date. I pulled out some of the deductions from revenue and just gone back to what the gross number is for collections. So that's why you see the 48%, it's just pushed out over the years. The one assumption there is that our reimbursement from Medicare and Medicaid will match our increase in trimester increases to keep that steady. And so there is some assumptions built into that, but without knowing what the future of Medicare and Medicaid will. We had to go with staffing is built on a fully staffed model. You see an increase in FY25 in salaries and wages specifically. Some of this has to do with the way I think it was allocation between the two departments as we started, and then the subsequent years are based on the budget and what they need to run the department. So this is what staff require.
Can we focus on the contractual allowance percent? When we, and I'm trying to think through the process, but when we started operating hospice, we got a rate that potentially was going to have some adjustments once we had our first cost base fee that took effect. Is that right?
A hospice will always be fee schedule based. It's not a cost based service.
Okay,
I think you're thinking Wellflower.
a wildflower. Okay, that's it. Yeah. So what is the difference? You know, when you look at gross charges versus net charges, the contractual allowance, what is that difference? Why is it just because the rates are set so low compared to what our cost delivery is?
Yeah, and so we set our charges are based on what the best payer is, and then we go a certain percentage above that. So we want to make sure we're not leaving anything on the table, so to speak. The biggest piece of hospice is what Medicare pays relative to our charges. So we have a consistent charge methodology, but Medicare, the longer the person's in the program, the less they actually pay per day. So for the first 30 days, Medicare has a set rate where they pay X per day, and then it drops down significantly after that. And so in theory, the longer the person's on the program, that you'd see an increase in contractual with those longer tenured ones, because we're writing off more and more of those charges. But where we would make money is the most expensive couple of days in the patients, it's all bundles up front. So the expenses also drop significantly once you get past that 30 day.
And the biggest difference between the contractual percentage of the 52% for Wildflower, I'm sorry, for hospice and overall for the hospital. Because if I remember right, our overall contractual percentage is around 9% for the hospital, not including charity, not including bad debt, just the actual contractual allowance itself. That sound about right?
It's a little bit higher than that. I'm thinking it's 40-ish.
Is it? So, but that's on the Medicare, Medicaid piece, right?
Yeah.
Overall, it's much lower because we have first dollar payers, right?
Yeah, well, our commercials run somewhere between 7%.
Okay.
Medicare and Medicaid are much higher.
And that's what I'm getting to is that, you know, even though on a blended basis, I guess it's blended contractual allowance percentages, you know, I think it's, 9% or 10% or somewhere in that ballpark.
I think it's still higher than that.
Is it? You think it's higher?
Yeah, I think it's in the high 30s, low 40s.
Okay. Overall. Okay.
Yeah, Medicare, I mean, I'm thinking when you look at it on an account basis, the contractual is probably closer to 60%. And it gets pulled down to that 40 with the new process.
Someone looked at it. Okay, so it's 43. So there's not a huge difference between 43% for the hospital and, okay.
Yeah, and some of that has to do with the way when they negotiated the contracts, some of the commercials, it was based on a Medicare rate with a markup. And so some of our best contracts are ones we've had in place for years and years. So Blue Cross and Aetna, we put those in place when they were still getting out their cost of charge contracts.
Yeah.
Which they don't do.
Right. Okay.
Some of that's just historical carryover.
Okay. Thank you.
Mr. Chair.
Yeah.
Those older contracts, auto renew, or do we have to renegotiate? My question is, are
Everybody.
any of those up for renewal? Okay.
Yeah.
Maybe I misunderstand how hospice is funded now. You're saying when someone enrolls, over time, what we get goes down?
So you get, I can't remember what the rate is, but for the first 30 days, it's paid at a higher level. Once you get past that 30 days, it drops down on a per day basis.
So in the past, a lot of people would be enrolled just for a day or less than a day, and then they would die. And I thought we didn't get very much for those people, but you're saying we get the full 30-day amount for those people?
No, you still get a day. It's per day.
Okay.
But I mean, it drops significantly between 0 through 30 gets paid, X, and then it drops to Y after that. And that's, I don't know, 20% reduction probably.
But I assume our expenses for the person must go down considerably too.
Yeah, they do. That's what I was. So they start really high as you start setting up the people with beds and all the equipment and nursing time to get them established. And then it kind of stabilizes and then you have a spike.
But they're paid on a per day basis. Thank you.
So can you talk about your assumptions from 26 to 29, Joe? Just on the very top line in terms of what's going to cause, what do we have to accomplish to get some of this realization that, you know, you look at these and it's 3, 4, 5% increase. What do we have to do to get there?
So as we look at FY 26, it's based on getting to what so when we look back at the census, it's obviously had some serious ups and downs over the course of this year. Some of those are driven by staffing, some are discharges. So we just tried to find an average period, and then we based the budget on said average period. And so it's going to be a census of 6.5 with an average length of stay of roughly 60 days, if I remember right. And so once you get to that point, then the revenue moving forward is just projected off that. The second one would consider an additional, I think I bumped the census up to like 72 days or something like that to get to that next set of financials. So there is an increased census with that one, assuming we can only take care of X patients per day based on the staff. You can take care of longer. And so, and that, in my mind, that expenses stay relatively flat in the model and you'd have a slight increase in revenue. If that makes sense.
Are we seeing any traction around the longer length of stay yet? I mean, what are we looking at now? I mean, how realistic, I guess, is it to expect we're going to be able to increase by almost 2 weeks?
It's gonna be patient. It's a tough one because it is an average. So if we get someone on the program that's been on there, let's say 2 years, and then we only have 6 people, it's gonna skew stuff.
Yeah.
And so when we had those super long lengths of stay, when we first looked at the program, I think we had 1 or 2 people that were on super long time and a bunch of super short. Ideally, what we can do is bring the median up to a better number, somewhere between 30 and 45. And that'd probably be better for the program. But the way this is measured, meaning you're looking at census with an average length of stay. Average is a bad measure in my mind.
The outreach in the medical community around, I mean, you've had some turnovers. Where do we stand with that relative to hospice?
Well,
It's kind
can you
of
speak to that one with Heather?
Sure, yeah, sure. So actually Heather and I just met, this past week. And so she has reached out to, I've asked her to reach out to Dr. Mather, who's chief of staff, to see if she could get some time with medical staff. And also with Dr. Tainer to get time with the hospitalist program also. So to try to go over education outreach. So to kind of keep that in the forefront of everybody's mind.
We did have Dr. Urata and Bruce join med staff last month and give a 5-7 minute talk to start their med staff meeting. So they had a chance to, I know they dropped off some books and some flyers and some more information from med staff.
how'd that go?
So hi, I'm Bruce Wyruck, if you don't know me. We went to med staff. I talked to Dr. Mather first because part of the mission of the Foundation for End of Life Care, and I'm the president and Bob's on the board, is to support hospice and home care of Juneau and to educate the public and the medical profession on end of life services, including bereavement. And if we are to extend hospice care longer and to support hospice and home care of Juneau, which benefits the hospital, and to get people out of the beds in the hospital and get them a home care with hospice, that can benefit everyone. But they need to get referral to hospice sooner. And people need to get into hospice sooner. And so what we want to do with med staff is help educate them on end of life services, which will benefit their patients and the hospital and quality of end of life. So we also wanted to be able to give doctors the ability to get continuing medical education credit by going to these, so it benefits them. And we also want to get that combined with the public, because the public sometimes has a negative attitude about what hospice is and does. And we need to continually educate the public about how it's beneficial at end of life. And so to meet the twin goals of educating the public and educating the physicians, we are going to be sending the survey to med staff on 2 things, really. Who is it that you want to hear if you know somebody to come up, and how can we help finance that? And 2, what areas do you want to hear about that we can try and find speakers to help you, med staff, work on benefiting the whole area, complex area of hospice. So that's what we're doing.
They were receptive to the message.
Absolutely.
Yeah, great.
So, it's the same old problem as 30 years ago, is that doctors are reluctant to refer to hospice because that means they failed. Or the attitude is, if I talk to you that, you know, I can't treat you anymore, this is the end of treatment, you're going to die from your cancer, that's a failure. So that, you know, that attitude was very strong back in the old days. I don't know how it is with these younger doctors because I haven't engaged with them, but I have a sense that that's sort of the same idea. And so I think one way of dealing with that is to educate, and also to educate the community so that the community says, hey, if this is it, I want to die comfortably with my loved ones around me. And that's an important message to the medical staff. I think the majority of the medical staff understands the end of life care concept and has a good idea of, you know, when to stop and when to continue. There's a few doctors who will, you know, treat until, you know, death. And because some people or some patients want to be kill me or cure me type attitude. And that doesn't, you know, I guess if that's how they feel, that's, you know, that's okay. So anyway, those are some of the things that our community faces. And I think the only way to deal with that is education.
Yeah. And it's carrying on the education that's the important part, right? I mean,
Oh, yeah.
that's,
Yeah.
it's being consistent around that message. And that's, you know, part of the idea of the 5-year plan was, part of that was to try to have some consistency of message, you know?
Yeah. And so the End of Life Care Foundation has some money to do that. You know, that was part of the Kerrigan Fund, where she donated $500,000 to do this education and maintain hospice throughout Juneau.
Yeah.
For a long time. And so that's what the End of Life Foundation has to administer.
What about the nurses, Dr. Urata? I mean,
When my mom went into hospice, I didn't hear it from a doctor. I heard it from a nurse, you know?
The hospice nurses are specially trained. They're trained into how to talk about death and dying, what kind of symptoms and signs to look for, and how to treat those, how to develop, you know, provide comfort care. And of course, the hospice medical director, who's now Dr. Dunn, and Dr. Schneider, and I think there's one other, Mather, are trained in how to do that. And so I think it's important to keep that going and continue to have at least 1 out of 12 of the medical staff meetings have a talk on end of life care. And there's so many aspects, you know, how do you tell a person they're dying? How to tell a person to stop, you know, aggressive treatment and now go to comfort care, you know, how to do this, how to do that. And we provided some of that throughout the year in the past, but now we're trying to get started up again.
And the survey will go to nurses as well.
yeah.
Get their
Great.
Mr. Chair, I have a question.
Yeah.
So does this education, when does the education of the patient and their families start? From personal experience, I wish that the conversation would have started sooner with me in the process of what was going on. This is not a criticism of the physician, but pretty much everyone in the hospital, we were talking at my request in many ways about finding long-term care or finding another modality, until one of the physicians who was rounding said, your husband is dying. He needs to go into hospice. It would have been helpful to me and probably others to know that this is a potential outcome of this, and to prep me and the rest of the family that this is a potential, this is what it looks like. This is when we start talking about it. Is that part of anyone's protocol?
I don't know that it's in anyone's protocol. I would think not. But I think that as part of your brochures that the hospital develops, you know, about all the services available, now they can put in the services of hospice and home care and have a little blurb about that so people can read about it first. And then generally the social workers could talk about things of that sort, or a chaplain about, you know, but really the physician and hopefully the primary nurse get together and talk about, you know, what if this doesn't go as we planned? You know, and when you're talking about something that you could potentially die from, like cancer, like severe congestive heart failure, like end-stage COPD, those are kidney failure. You know, if you're already on dialysis, you should be talking about what you want for end-of-life care. And you can bring up like the living will. You know, we have a living will thing in this state, thanks to
Advanced healthcare directive.
advanced healthcare director, when he was working in the House. Yeah, he helped develop that law 20, 30 years ago. And so those are some of the things that should be in a brochure and perhaps a social worker should talk about, especially for those with, you know, certain diagnosis.
But I think what you're, is it Deborah?
Yeah.
I think what you're talking about, I faced too with my family, when my mom just died in November. People don't want to hear hospice because they think you want to kill them. And it's a public education issue.
And I'm not, I guess my point is perhaps it could be incorporated in the hospital's protocols as well. I didn't hear from the, what the case managers, they were trying to accommodate my wishes. But if we'd had a frank conversation about the option, so it's not necessarily just the doctors and the nurses, it's the climate isn't the right word, but just the mindset
The
of
culture of
the culture of.
And one of the things the foundation wants to do is we're going to use our money to really improve our website, because what we do not have is a good community database for people to go and see what's available and why and when, and who can do and who can help and who's, you know, and that kind of information people should have at their fingertip with their mouse. That's what people do first, and then they talk.
So not to put you on the hot seat, Joe, but I'm gonna put you on the hot seat a little bit. When Bob and Amy, myself, Hal, Ian, I don't know if you were in that meeting or not. We met, when was that, Bob? Last fall sometime?
Might have been around September, October.
Yeah, we talked about having the value potentially of having regular meetings, you know, with the end of life care group, JCF, just to make sure everybody's coordinating, you know, quarterly or something. Are those happening?
I would say no.
Is there value in that?
I think once we are fully staffed, I think there'd be more value.
Yeah.
I mean,
What do you guys think about
There's
it?
value, 100% agree there's value.
Yeah, okay. I kind of think so too, quarterly or semi-annual or something like that.
Well, at least quarterly.
The other thing that we had talked about with Ian, and of course, I think it was Ian's idea was having one or more senior staff serve on this, on your board.
Fine. Give us a name, we'll
kind of-
grab them.
I think that makes sense too, because it'll help connect what's going on there. Because it's inherently, it's not a hospital, inside a hospital function, you know, it involves y'all, it involves the, you know, the hospice community. And so to the extent that we can build some, you know, connections there.
The benefit of a member of Bartlett senior management team on our foundation would be to cross fertilize and provide information.
Yeah.
When Catholic Community Services did that, we did that. That didn't work as well because the board member wasn't as engaged and as helpful. But if you have somebody who can provide information to the hospital back and forth and it's open, people know what's going on. It's clear lines of communication and questions when they come up.
Would you consider that?
We talked about it, yeah.
And we have to work, we don't have a ton of money, but we can do is advocate because many people in the community really support hospitals. But Juneau Community Foundation really is an integral part of this conversation.
Yep.
And I've been very grateful to work with a guy who can read that stuff because I can't. And Bob Bartholomew is a guy.
Can you read that stuff, Bob?
When I got closer.
You got it. Did you want to say something, Bob?
Yeah, I would just say, I mean, I think just put some context for my role. So I was involved with the Community Foundation 5-6 years ago. And my role was the treasurer, but I went through in my personal life, 2 family members who ended up with hospice care. And it was very constructive and positive. So it opened my eyes to what's going on. Community Foundation had this endowment and there was some momentum being built by the original people that set it up, people with money, unlike me. But, and so I started working with them to learn about it and to get engaged and we had momentum to growing the endowment. So it started growing. Then I spent 3 years gone. I was off in Ireland and whatever. And I came back at the time in the media, it was kind of blowing up. Catholic Community Services was gone and Bartlett had just said, here, the city had just said, here you go. And so it, everything kind of dried up. There was no money coming in and you know how it is. Vacuum gets filled, other needs, people start going to other places. So I talked to people on the board. I talked to the former funders of the endowment and we were all like, no, let's try to re-engage and figure out what's going on and see if we can get it back on track. Again, the most important thing for us is a valuable hospice program being delivered. So it isn't always just about the numbers, but for me and for what we're trying to do at the Community Foundation, and I'll say again, there's 2 sources of money. There's an endowment, and right now it's kind of restricting back to where the only money that's going to flow to these programs is out of the endowment. But there's also 2 large sources of social service grants that go all across the city for all the social service things you hear. And some of that money used to go into the hospice program.
Oh, it did. I didn't know that.
Yep.
$25,000 a long time ago.
Yeah.
That was a big deal in
Yeah.
those days.
And that's the kind of stuff where at this point, it's not coming back until the confidence level of things grows. And that's what I'm trying to do, which is really where I get back into the numbers. How the donors will start re-engaging is when I can sit with them and show them what's going on financially. It doesn't really matter if the bottom line is negative. What matters to them is the trends. What they're now hearing out in the community is that the program is up, it's working, if there's positive things.
That's the quality program.
Yeah, so that's huge. But right now, there's still a vacuum of financial information. And maybe it's just because I'm a numbers person, but just basic operating budgets on a regular basis that show what's going on in the current year, in addition to the big pictures, the multi-year pictures. And I'll just add, it'd be great if at some point the grant funding that comes in from the Bartlett Foundation, from the Foundation for the End of Life, from the Community Foundation, ends up in the financial reports. I think that's an important piece because then we can show contributors, okay, here's what's going on, and here's the piece that we're playing now, and we want to make it a bigger piece.
Yeah.
I mean, that's our goal, is to make it a bigger piece to help us too.
And one thing that's would be very advantageous is because, and you have us support the hospital in lots of other ways. And if we say Bartlett Foundation or Bartlett Hospital is doing a good job on managing and implementing hospice and home care of Juneau, politically, that can go a long way to helping Bartlett, number one. Number two is that we want to be able to work with the community to provide lots more money into this program. And as an advocacy group, we can do that too. So we can help. We need to know what it's going to cost if we had to start a new hospice organization, the ground up and to run it, because we can use that for comparative purposes too. So having that money and that information, I think Bob's always asked, what would it cost to start and implement and run a hospice? And I don't know the answer.
So, okay, go over these points.
Yes.
We have included that in this analysis, Bob, so you can see where the Juneau Community Foundation and the city have done.
So that's new, right?
That's new, so we're trying to share that. It's something that in our normal financials, it typically doesn't live there, and I had to pull it in so you guys can see it.
Right.
But to Bob's point, having that as so can you roll back up to page 14? So these have been, what you have is month-to-date home health and hospice and year-to-date home health and hospice, Bob. And we've had these in our packets every month since, I think October is the first month we had that, September, October. So this information is here. It's gotten more refined because they haven't, it's literally, there was no payments on the program, until the fall.
I understand it ended up in your lap.
But when you go down, when you scroll down to non-op, keep going a little bit further. So it would be where that contribution would go is on 38, right? Row 38. And so it will be there.
Yeah, that's great.
But I think it'd be good for you to, have you seen this? I guess, first of all, have you seen this report?
One was sent to Bruce.
Joe gave me a form and I
So,
sent it.
yes.
Okay.
I don't know if
Through it.
Because we could easily set up to have that page of this report fed to you. But I think it's important if you're not seeing, if there's information that you would like more detail or sliced and diced a different way or whatever, let's talk about it. Because again, we can, he and I talk all the time about what's in the financial statements and the numbers, and we dive into it and stuff. And a lot of what's here is because of what he likes and what I like. But it's a significant user, obviously, of these numbers. If there's different information or more information that you like, we just need to set up to provide that to you. I mean, it could even be something that just goes to you every month, and might come to the board or might not come to the board. But we are producing regular financial information specific to this program because of your request last fall. So that since then, it's been in every finance packet.
Yeah, that's great. And I would say, you don't need to create anything special. So whatever is working for the program managers, people that are running the program, if the information they're using, that's it. And if this is, the best level of detail, then that's what we're going to work with.
Yeah.
I don't want to create anything new.
Yeah, if you go back to page 18, what that does show is that after we stop getting the funding, the drop off in the losses increase because it's funded by JCF or other organizations.
Roll down to the bottom there, Sharon.
Oh, I guess we have commitment of 5 years from JCF is what we talked about with Amy Scalebread. And then the city basically did 2 years of $100,000 a year for each of the programs. So they've been through 26 funding.
And, I wanted to, maybe first the 75,000 from, because that was the number that Amy felt like she could, at least that was my memory. And that's part of the reason that's in there. Is that still
Right now, I don't think Amy's projection would be 75,000 a year for the next 5 years. But I need to verify that with her. And personally, it should be. But if it's not, then that's work I have to do. And ultimately, there'll be a request. Bartlett needs to be doing requests on an annual basis.
Yeah.
Working with the grants office or whatever. They're familiar with this.
That would be Noel putting a grant request in to Amy specifically?
Yeah, to the community foundation, right. So any nonprofit that receives money, primarily in addition to the endowment is pretty specific. We can't do much with that except bring it to hospice. It's the additional social service pool of money that has shrunk away. And so in addition to growing the endowment, I'd like to, be able to go to the Community Foundation Board and to the Grants Committee and push for starting to bring some of that back. It was a priority program in the past, and a lot of the donors of the Community Foundation would be very supportive of it, increasing back to the program and to Bartlett.
Yeah,
So I'll confirm those numbers and make sure what they're currently thinking is what I communicate to Joe. And then if it's not where we think it needs to be, then it starts hopefully with me being able to work with the original funders of the program. And then if not, then, pressure and inputs are always helpful.
yeah, Dr. Right.
So do you have the last couple of years financial data from Catholic Community Services?
Goose egg,
Oh, that's too bad.
and we asked for it.
Oh, that's too bad because
Okay.
they could, you could see how much they were getting from various areas of funding.
Yeah, there's been a lot of uncertainty around what the landing spot will be
Yeah.
where this is a little bit of a wag. It's getting to be less of a wag, a little bit more educated, as we get better information, but it's still a guess.
And this packet, obviously I can go to the website and get the finance committee packet.
Right.
So I can get that myself.
Going back, yeah, the budget information's all there. And, just to restate it, the board's position on this last year, and it will continue to be that, there's a tremendous amount of support for the hospice and home care as well. It's not just the hospice. We view them a lot, when you think about the cost of operating a program, home care can help if it's functioning, if it's working, then, one can benefit the other. But there is a tremendous amount of, I can't speak for more than 5 years down the road or so, but the idea is to set it up in such a way that it just becomes a natural part of the hospital, right? That's what we're headed for.
Well, I had come to this meeting that Max had advised me about it. Appreciate your getting back to me on my email and
Yeah.
now. But just to get information on the budget and hospice and put it online and stuff, but I think that can be addressed if Bob gets the information on finances. So, because Bob's kind of the finance guy and I rely on him and you all. That's number one. Number two, Joe, if you want to follow up with me, you have my email on a possible name for our board. I can reach out to them and talk to them, meet with them separately.
Yeah, I'm just gonna discuss it with my SLT and see if we have someone that's
Right.
really interested.
But it's not going to be a big burden. I'm happy to dispel freak out. Oh no, not another obligation. And then three is continuing to meet.
Yeah.
At least quarterly, we would like to make sure you know what we're doing and what you're doing and to maintain that communication and link. That's very important. And so I want to thank you for letting me come
Yeah. Thanks for
and letting me talk. Deborah, I have a lot of empathy with what you were talking about. And I learned that the reason there's nails in a coffin is to keep the oncologist out. But I don't want to take any more of your time. So I really appreciate it. And that's sort of my end of this participation. If you have any questions for me.
No, I don't. We still want to go through some more numbers on this before we finish it. So, but yeah, thanks for coming, Bruce. Thank you very much, Dr. Rudd. So, go on
Luann's dentist.
I was curious about the salaries and wages line, the change there. That's just, it looks like it's an inflation-based kind of adjustment. Is that right?
Yeah, we did for salaries and wages, yeah.
Yeah.
We did swag after the contract runs its term. We used the data we had from the union contract to drive most of it.
Okay. And that salary number is, there are some crossover costs between home care and hospice in that number, correct? The director, for example.
Director, I mean, we try to allocate where we can. Obviously, it's not perfect.
how did you split the ones that you split? Is it just 50/50 or how did you do that?
Just experience. So they track their time by department.
They do, okay,
Yeah, so they just estimated it.
okay.
The drop off you see from 25 is we have, large wages. Yeah, it was driven because right now we have Heather staying on helping us run some, catch up on some program stuff that we haven't got to.
So you're doubled up with,
So we doubled up on that. So that drove the expenses up a little bit this year. For comparisons, we pulled her out for next year, although she will be helping us. It's a one-off to get caught up. It's not really a program oriented, right?
so other operating expenses, what is in that? Line 34.
Catches a lot of the miscellaneous stuff that falls into it. We do a lot of education. And so, I mean, education is in there. You have advertising is in there. As we have expenses where we have to buy stuff for patients, sometimes it drops in there, so it doesn't always supplies. Just depends. And historically, we've educated, I mean, home health and hospice, they get a lot of education. We do a lot of education in that department specifically.
Yeah, by education, do you mean things like training hospice nurses, or do you mean educating patients, or?
Training hospice nurses, sometimes we send, I mean, you go to conferences and it's an expensive process. We also have some education dollars set aside for some of the physicians too. So medical director fees.
Do we reimburse for mileage and other costs for our staff?
Yeah, there'll be some travel expenses.
And that will be in the travel.
There's still a vehicle that the foundation bought.
Yeah, we have a vehicle, but maybe it doesn't meet all the needs sometimes. I mean, yeah, gas as well.
So that's all the vehicle expenses are all coming in.
So can you just walk us through the top line differences between page 18 and page 19? And, you know, it looks like it's another couple of points of increase. And what is that?
So roughly 2-week increase in census results in like an additional 8 to 10% revenue. And so that's what went to the top line. And then we estimated the equal amount of write-off with those. And so that's how it works.
And so the idea of, I mean, back to what Dr. Urata was talking about a little bit earlier, and you were too, but the idea to be able to get to those kinds of length of stay, to bring that median up that you're talking about, that's education, that's a lot of continued work to do that. And so I guess the question is, do you have any sense about which one's more realistic at this point?
Probably in the short term, it's going to be the first one.
Okay.
Maybe in the long term, as we work towards it, it could shift over.
Okay.
To be honest, the way volumes swing on a month-to-month basis.
Yeah, right.
I don't want to guess.
It's a tough one. I get you on that. Okay. All right.
It's easier to project a hospital because you have so many pieces going into it. You know, and the number is so big, it's easier to swag a number for the hospital than it is for smaller departments for me.
Yeah.
Well, I wonder if we should, getting back to Amy and the $75,000 commitment, that you'll follow up on that, Bob, and get with Joe on.
Yep, and I think the 75 must be a combination of community foundation and the end of life.
Yeah.
Is my guess.
Yeah,
And-
just taking into consideration some of the end of life.
Yeah, and so I think there's more potential, but
Okay.
we'll see. I
All right.
want to make sure that's real first.
Yeah. Yeah, I don't want to beat a dead horse, but I would really like to see regular meetings between, especially you being involved in, and or whatever staff you have in them, because I really think that'll just help the, long-term.
I mean, we can start meetings there, but it'd be ideal for whoever my liaison is to their board would be the person kind of running those, right?
Get you. Okay, we've spent a lot of time on this housing. Dr. Urata and Bob, thanks for coming very much. We appreciate it. Well, you're welcome to stick around. Housing shortage.
We put this bullet on here just to open up the discussion with board members. Housing has been a particular stressful problem probably for Ken more than anybody at this point. We've had several offers accepted, rescinded from employees. director of pharmacy, social work, nurses, with the primary driving behind that is they can't find a landing spot. They can't find a rental. They can't find a rental that accommodates dogs. And so it's right now it's driving some of our increased contract employee utilization because we have to keep staffing that position. We just can't find people that want to take spots. And that's just the ones we know about. So what we're not tracking is the offers that aren't accepted, and is housing a reason for some of those. And so, I mean, there could be more. And so recently, a sixplex came up for sale in the valley, and so it brought up discussion at SLT and director level. Are we at the point where the hospital should consider acquiring our own set housing so we can manage these and have a landing place for employees? And so what this would be utilized for would be, as we hire people, can we offer them 3 months, come land? And maybe it's we can spot, we can get some more staff in here. So we have trouble getting CNAs. It's gonna be real tough to move a CNA here with the price of housing if you don't have somewhere that they can afford to live.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to bring that up consideration, try to move it forward. I know there's lots of steps involved for acquiring property through the city. That would go beyond this meeting past the boards because we have to go to the manager's office, assembly approval, lands, I believe has to approve it as well. It needs a fair market value assessment. Alterations.
Oh, Dr. Rogers.
I was at the yacht club last night and they talked about they're bringing in a new Coast Guard cutter to stay in Juneau. It'll be probably 2 years or 3 years. And a lot of families coming in.
Yeah.
And so housing is going to get worse.
Yes. So, yeah, there's a city process in acquiring real estate for sure. And there's also the option of having a rental pool as well.
That's the avenue we're pursuing right now operationally. I mean, it is tough because we are competing with cruise lines in search for some of these rental pools. We have one particular person that's kind of working with us, and I think we're gonna get 4 units locked up. But when you look at that on a month-to-month basis, the number of travelers we can fill that with travelers easy, right? And then that differs in cost too, if we have that as a landing spot versus, Aspen Suites or a rental aid.
Bartlett used to have a rental pool of houses. Bob, do you remember?
I don't recall that.
Yeah.
No.
We do, I mean, we have a duplex right now that we typically use for predominantly contractors.
Yeah.
But I mean, the needs greater than we have.
How about Bartlett House? Is that still available?
We use one of the apartments for that. Yeah, so we've had a contract CFO stayed in there for a long time. It's probably gonna be a landing spot for one of our recent hires as well.
Can I ask you, do you know what the price is for the sixplex? Just or some sixplex?
I know what the listed price is. I don't know what the
We'll just-
market value.
Let's talk hypothetically. Just
So it's listed at 1.65 million. So, I mean, there is a hefty price tag on that, but it is 6 units, multiple bedrooms on all of them. So it would allow us to have access to, land a few of these families. It would have saved us, I don't know how much our contractors, Chad was trying to pull the number. If we would have hired out these last 10 people, what would it have saved us over the last 2 months? I don't know that number.
I've checked around the last couple of days and Realtor told me that they generally sell between $200,000 and $300,000 a unit. These 4 to 8 plex, there's a lot of them in town and that's what they're seeing them sell for. And the difference has to do with, size, location, how new it is, that kind of stuff. So it does seem like the path of least resistance to a certain extent is to go out and acquire more rental pool properties, right? Rather than go through the acquisition. And that's a little bit easier on the contracting side too, I believe. Is that?
Yeah, we're already processing through that. So we're able to do our rents. But when you look at cost of renting versus cost of ownership, I mean, it is a more expensive way long term.
Yeah. Yeah, is there any questions for Joe on that?
So I guess the way I'd like to frame that conversation out on the acquisition side is first, what I don't have a sense of is what your
Housing deficit is. What I'd like to know is, if we had houses, we'd be in great shape. If we had 20 houses, we'd be in great shape. If we had 10, we'd be okay. What is that? What are you looking, what do you need? And so we need a kind of, to me, it seems like there's a little bit of needs assessment. And then you just hit on the one that's the other side of this, which is is the rental versus purchase difference.
So we can do the ROI on that too, once we start getting some of those framed out.
Yeah.
Because we're in initial discussion. We actually have a contract came in today, so I think we're getting close to signing a contract. I can start framing it out, like if we rented these versus purchased them, what it would be long term. You guys understand?
Okay. Is your timing such that you feel like you've got the authority you need now to move forward, especially on the rental side on the short term?
I'm good on the rental side. We can move on that.
Okay.
Whether it fills the need, we can find enough properties, it might be a problem.
Yeah, I mean, there are some properties that are available out there. I just got a call right before lunch here. You put the word out and you start hearing things like this. And so I think that there's probably some options there. And what you have to do is just be ready to grab them when they come up. So you feel you're okay on the rental side?
We're moving on, yeah, I'd say. We're getting closer to being okay.
But no, I mean on the authority.
I have the authority to move on it, yeah, it's operational.
And it is. But I do think that it's important for us to understand how much you're talking about, because when you do these rental contracts with people that own them, you're committing whether you got a body in the unit or not, right? And so.
Next month, no matter what.
I'd like to have some more information. That can wait till the next finance committee meeting, but kind of what we're talking about in terms of cash flow on that.
I guess our friend.
Yeah, okay.
Just in general, like the first property we looked at, I think was $2,700 a month or something for a 2-bedroom furnished.
Yeah. Okay. All right, and then also for the next meeting, is it next meeting reasonable to expect an just the difference between purchasing and renting?
Yeah, we can do an ROI on that. We can try to come up with some needs assessment. Just in general, I mean, some of it's gonna be educated guesses.
Yeah.
So that,
sure.
I mean, we just don't have offers being rescinded. We also have staff telling us, my house is getting sold out from underneath me. If I don't have another rental within the next 2 months, I'm leaving town. And so we've had a couple of those recently. We're trying to scramble to find them a rental so they can move. But if we had a property, it helped maybe save some staff too.
Okay. Hey, I don't want to leave this conversation in a place where you don't feel like you've got, and as far as the purchase side, I want you to be able to really explore that. And because, the market is such that you'll have to have all your ducks in a row so that you can move and, subject to all the, obviously the bureaucratic stuff that you have to go through to get something like that purchased. But do you feel like you've got what you need at this point, just to investigate it, Joe?
I can investigate it. Yeah. So what you're wanting is I bring back the ROI and kind of the needs assessment for next month. So you guys can look at that and we can talk about what a number is or whether we want to pursue this at all. Is that what you're shooting for?
That's what I'm shooting for.
Yeah, and so in subsequent month, at some point, the way this is gonna work in my mind is I'm gonna have to have some authority to start moving the ball between board meetings with final approval being at the board.
Yeah.
They have to make an offer, put down escrows, or stuff just comes and goes and we miss out.
I'm with you on that, but as I've kind of thought this through, and I think we need to have a solid basis on here's why buying makes.
I don't want to rush into this. I think we need to do our due diligence and have this discussion a few times. We want to talk about it multiple times to get everyone's.
Yeah.
This is a kickoff.
The sixplex that you're interested in has already got an offer on it, so I mean, it's gone anyway, so. I mean, but there will be others. Yeah.
One of the things when we're talking about the analysis is the timeline to get through this, an estimated timeline to get through the CBJ procurement process as well. So.
And I have those steps lined up. Emily was able to provide those. I can look at some of the prior ones we've tried to purchase and see how long that's taken, just so I get an idea.
Yeah. It is made more simple by the fact that there's not debt involved. These would be cash purchases, so you don't have also the approval for the obligation that you have. You know, so it simplifies it somewhat, but he's right, it's got to go first to Lance,
Right.
then to the assembly. So first to us, then Lance and then the assembly. By definition, you're looking at 3 or 4 months.
And I was thinking that's like planning, finance, will be more. Then it goes
Yeah.
to plans.
We could combine a
Planning.
plan. We could combine planning and financing. I mean, especially if this thing's gonna move along, you need to have a special meeting. You want it, because it's urgent. I mean, I get the urgency of this thing and it's a bummer that we're losing staff, you know.
It's tough. I mean, Kim is getting the brunt of it. She gives.
Yeah, I think through the chair, I think we've had in the last, I would say month and a half, 10 people back out. 2 of those was a couple. One was a pharmacy director, one was case manager for Wildflower Court. And they can't, you know,
They can't find housing, right? Dr. Rada?
So back in the old days, we talked about building a building for some clinic or something out on the parking lot. And that might be something to consider as space, is to build a 4-plex or a 6-plex for housing for people. And then, of course, you build it up and then have parking underneath it.
Yeah.
Just a consideration. It's kind of out to lunch consideration, but you know.
Well, the other option that we have is to add units to Bartlett House. I mean, if we added Bartlett House, they could
You potentially carry, 2 different, so I mean, that might be something that we go, what does it look like to add 6 units to Bartlett House?
Something we can explore.
Yeah, good idea. Thinking out of the box.
and it's that,
When you build parking garages, they've got to be concrete and steel. And that's expensive stuff, man.
Yeah.
So,
But housing doesn't require that.
yeah, I think Bartlett House, we can build out of sticks, the current one is.
So I'll do some research to try to bring it back to this committee next month.
Yeah, okay. All right, that sounds great. And you and I can talk about it in the meantime, if we need to schedule a special meeting, because we got to kick this along, let's do it. Okay, anything more on that, Joe? Committee comments and questions?
I just wanted to make a comment, how awesome it is that we are where we are financially. On Becker's, they're saying over 15 hospitals have closed so far this year. And I can't remember the number of others that are shutting down some services. And Bartlett is doing good financially. We're improving services to our community, and everybody deserves a big pat on the back for that. So thank you for all the hard work to get here.
yeah. Yeah. I mean, the difference a year makes, right? Shelley?
Yeah.
Crazy. So,
Anything else? Okay, we're adjourned. Bob, good to see you as always. Thanks for coming.
yeah.
Appreciate it.
Good meeting, you guys.